Hello, this is a video about my X19. I'll just show you, turn the camera around, that it's me. So this isn't a guitar one, this is about my car. Now, Fiat X19s have gone up in value lately. They've become, I don't know, the 70s and the 80s have become popular, Bumblebee. And I've had mine for 10 years now, nearly 10 years, and I've got it running pretty well, touch wood. And I'm going to show you the modifications I've made to it that you might consider with yours to make yours run better. So I'll turn the camera around. I've never done this before. And there's the car, and I've done what a lot of people on YouTube do and blank the license plate. Now, the first thing you see there is a K&N filter, and of course my "Where the heck is Northcliffe" badge. But let's take you to the engine bay and show you it. Now, the first thing that I had problems with the car was overheating in traffic so that it wouldn't start. And so I had a thought about that, and I thought, need to get more air to the engine bay. And so what I've done, as you can see, is I've cut open the engine bay and put some mesh that I got from a local hardware store in. And what that does is it lets the air from the scoops on the side, if I can just show you there, that can then go through. I've cut out the little mesh that is behind there as well, and that can go through into the engine bay, through there and there and out and through there, because there's a low pressure area at the back of the car, and keep the whole engine bay a lot cooler. The next thing I've done is, you can see I've not got all the pancake filter and all this, took all that off, and that hose, because when I looked at it, it did nothing. That hose goes into there and then through and into a tiny little gap there, and that's where my finger is, that's where all the cooling, what there was, would be getting to the carburetor to keep it cool. So I got rid of all of that. You can see the huge amount of space I've got. I got a stainless steel expansion tank, because the plastic ones are getting old and I didn't want one of those to split on the motorway. It's got a high quality German fuel pump mounted there. They used to make them for the Luftwaffe in World War II, with the fuel filter there with the month and the year on it, so you can see that needs replacing, 721. I made a bracket out of galvanized steel. Then what else can I show you? I looked at the thermostat down there, took it off, took it all to pieces, rebuilt it so that that's working well and has the right thermostat in it. I put a K&N filter on. You can see there's the plate, and here's one of the important things. You see it's not taking the crankcase oil anymore. And look, I'll put my torch on. See, this didn't used to happen before the 60s and that. Crankcase oil vapor never used to go into the carburetor. That was only emissions in America and California. Look how clean it's kept. And there's a filter there, and what you can do with that is you could have a filter there, which I'm going to get rid of, or it can go into a bottle like the racing cars used to do, or it can vent if you want to underneath the car. But that keeps it. If you keep the Weber carburetor, I'll do a separate video on the Weber. If you keep the Weber carburetor clean, it starts straight up. I've put also, this was an earlier thing, I've put heat reflective tape on the fuel lines. You can see there, this is a standard thing they do in Australia, and I don't think I really needed it here. New fuel lines, of course, for unleaded fuel, and you can, these are ethanol resistant. Then the next thing I did, apart from making sure it's got a new cam belt and all the other things, is I put an electronic distributor on, and you can see there's the yellow plate there, which normally you have to take off to get to the points. And I found that although the points worked well, there'd be a little bit of churning on starting. So you can get a Fiat replacement, not one of the big companies, it's a Fiat one, and it goes in there and it's got an electronic Hall effect sensor built into it, and the wires go up there. It's got also, you can see the red tube going to vacuum advanced retard, I'll show you that later, and the wires go up to a generic switch here, which you can get on the internet. It only costs about £20 in England, and it's on a big thick piece of aluminium I cut up as a heat sink, and there's paste between it, and that's the switch unit. And that being there is cool, and should it ever fail, I've got a spare one, £20 worth in the boot, and I can replace it. And a coil that they use, I don't know the name of it, it's a Bosch one, they use it on Land Rover Discoveries for their electronic ignitions, and touch wood, that's worked absolutely perfectly. And when I turn the key on the car, let the fuel pump tick over a few times, it starts instantaneously, and you can't ask for more than that. But see how much space I've got in the engine bay with all that ducting, and there's the vents there. The next thing I've done is replaced all the brake fluid and clutch fluid with silicon fluid, because that won't hold water, and so it won't corrode the system, and it's a bit of a thing replacing it, but not that hard. And replace it with silicon, and then as long as your brake and clutch system was okay to begin with, no corrosion in it, it stays fine. And I recommend that. People say ridiculous things that silicon fluid is compressible. It's a fluid. Fluids are incompressible, and it's a dot fluid as well. Also, I put you can just see there, a breather on the heater pipe that goes to the front of the engine, because bleeding these cars, the cooling system can be a bit tricky, so that's a generic one I put in there. And when I do bleed it, I unscrew that a little bit, take the cap off the expansion tank, here's the overflow from it, and I plug that up. And I used to cycle, and I've got quite big lungs, and I put my mouth on that and blow, and the bubbles come out of there and out of the front, out of the radiator as well, and tighten those up. So they are the main things I've done to the engine bay, and it's transformed the car. I rebuilt the carburetor, or I had it rebuilt, and the reason they stopped working is because of the oil that gets clogged up in there because of the crankcase. The little holes in there and the jets, they clog up and don't work properly. So like I say, if you're having it rebuilt, don't have the crankcase breather going into there again, because you'll undo everything you've done. We don't need the fan thing on anymore. What else? I think that's a bit, they're the main things, but this took me a long time to do, and there wasn't a lot of help on the internet. There was help for this and that and the other. I put a bit of reflective corrugated aluminium stuff there to keep the heat from the heater pipe from the coil, but the coil and that switch, I've got an infrared thermometer, and they keep the same temperature all the time. Try and keep the engine bay a bit clean, because then it shows you if things are going wrong. Like I say, next episode I'll show you, I've got one of these that I took apart completely, and I'll show you where to clean it. They're not hard to clean, but really to do it, you need to take the carburetor. Oh, one thing, these carburetors loosen up. There's the bolts, there's two there, and there's two at the back. And you get a whining sound, which I thought was the distributor wearing out or the fuel pump, and it wasn't. It was that, and when my mechanic pushed down on it, the whining stopped. So you need to keep those nipped up, those 4 bolts. When I do the video on the actual carburetor itself, which was the main problem in my car, it just wouldn't run properly at all sorts of things, and it was all the carburetor jerking around in traffic, not starting after. It was all the carburetor. The base of the carburetors warp because they're, in a hot part of the engine there. And the first thing you have to do when you take the carburetor off is get it flat, which you can do with an emery paper on a piece of plate glass, which is properly flat, or if you've got some steel or something that's iron that's perfectly flat. But it takes a while to do it. But unless you've got a flat base to the carburetor, it won't seal properly, and you can't do any tuning. So that's the first thing to do with the carburetor when you take it off, is get the base of it absolutely flat, because nothing else will make any difference really, unless it's completely filthy. So there we are. I hope hope it's been some use to you. They're a great car. I get nothing but happy smiles from people who come and talk to me, and I used to have one of these, and it's a sensible sized car and all those things that you know if you've got one. But look where I've cut it out there. And the German Luftwaffe fuel pump, I forget the name of them, but you'll be able to find it out. And how small the fuel pipe is. I've still got the mechanical one down there at the back of the engine for emergencies with a pipe on it. should I need it, but the German ones know how to do it. Oh, and all the crimp connections that I put in now, when I make a crimp connections, I've got some good quality crimp connectors. I had to get them when I was in Australia, but I soldered them as well. Crimping them isn't enough. You know, when you're in your shed or somewhere where you're making, crimp them and then solder them. Here we are, last little view of me to show that I'm still here. Anyway, I hope that's some use to you. I'll go and put this up on YouTube now. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.